Today, we're going to talk about problems, and specifically, how you can use problems to go further in your career, right? So today, it's just going to be about problems. Now, a couple of things you need to know about problems is, number one, is that problems actually connect us. They connect us like us human beings one to another. That's why we have virtues like, for example, empathy. The ability to put yourself in another person's shoe. Sympathy, same thing, yeah? And just like an example, you remember we had a speaker who spoke about something that she went through? You remember you may not have had cancer ever in your life, but there was a connection between you and that person, right? And that's what problems do, is that they connect us to one another at such a deeper level we may not even understand. And this is not just in human beings. Like if you take, for example, fictional characters, right? I know like most of us have seen The Three Idiots. That movie, The Three Idiots. Those are fictional characters. And yet, when we watch that movie, what happens is we identify with those characters and we love them. When you may never had, for example, a bad teacher before, or like a very strict professor, a director that's very strict. But when you see it, you relate with that. Family obligations, for example, there was one guy, all his life he wanted to do wildlife photography. But he went to an engineering college because his daddy wanted him to go there. Now, it may not be your story, but when you heard that, you connected to that. So this is how deep problems can connect us to one another, that even fictional characters, we connect to them. That's why we love stories. That's why the movie industry is booming right now. Why? Because there's conflict at the center of the story. So that's the first thing we need to know about problems, is it connects us at a deeper way than we may be able to understand. Number two is that people tend to notice problems much more quicker than they notice good things. People tend to notice the negative than they do the positive, right? So, and then there's a story about like a professor. He went into his class. He was going to give them an impromptu test, a surprise test, right? So what he did was he had papers where he drew a black dot on the paper, in the middle of the paper. And he said, students, I'm going to give you a test, a class test, okay? So look at the paper, and then you write what you see on the paper. And the students were very surprised, because this is very unusual. Usually you have questions, right? And then the teacher was bringing now a paper with a black dot. And then everyone was saying, I see a black dot, I see a black dot, I see a black dot. And then at the end of the test, he collected all their answers. And they all said the same thing. I see a black dot. I see a black dot. Some people even try to describe the position of the black dot on the page. It's on the center of the page. And then he said, I just demonstrated to you how we look at life. Because our life is so vast. The paper is our life. It's so vast. There's so much white in that paper. There's a whole A4. There's so much white that you saw. Because the question was, what did you see on the paper? Right? And everyone saw that little black dot. Isn't it the same with our lives? You could have 99 things to be thankful for, 99 things to be grateful about. But that one small thing, we tend to notice it very quickly, very, very quickly. Right? In our everyday life, for example, my mom, for example, she may tell me, hey, Desire, don't do this. Don't do this. And maybe for a week and a couple of days, I will not do that thing. The day that I'll do that thing, oh my gosh. You can relate to that, yeah? When you have, for example, maybe you're in the workforce, and the boss, for example, he tells you, do this certain thing, a certain exact way. And then you've been doing it for a couple of days, and then the one day where you mess it up, it's like, didn't you notice the whole time I was doing it correctly? The whole time I was doing it correctly. But now that I do it wrong, you tend to notice it. We laugh at people who, speak the wrong way. When everybody speaks the correct way, nothing, just. But the moment someone says something, English is broken, or they say the wrong thing, or they mess up something, that's when we tend to notice, we're quick to point out the negatives. And that's also sort of like a human nature, right? And psychologists, actually, this is an actual phenomena that actually humans have, and it's called the negativity bias. We tend to notice the negative things, the problematic things much quicker than we are to notice the positive things. So that's the second thing about problems that I want to share with you. Now, the last thing that I want to share with you is, you've probably heard the saying, the grass is greener on the other side. Yeah? The grass is greener on the other side. And people use that to try and say that, if I go, like, say, for example, to a different place or a different country or a different company, I'm just going to have more opportunities. Yeah? But I would like to suggest to you that the reason why it looks greener on the other side is because of problems as well. When you think about it, that analogy, the hill is on the other side. What makes the grass greener is nutrients. And nutrients for plants comes from dead, decaying things, bad things, things you don't even want to touch, right? Yucky things, disgusting things. So when you're over here and you're looking on the other side of the hill, what you're seeing is the green. The greenery is so good. What you're not noticing is there's so much manure, and there's so much dead things, disgusting things, and the plants are thriving on those things. Same thing with life, right? You think about any person any country that you are like, okay, that country, if I went to that country, I would have so many more opportunities. Canada, for example, for many Indians, it's Canada, right? The USA, for example. And then you really think about, if you were to go to Canada, or if you were to go to the United States, there's much more problems there. Do you know how much rent is in the state of New York for one-bedroom apartment? It's so much high. So those guys, they are dealing with problems at a higher, even higher level than you are here in India. But because we just focus on the glamour, on the glam. Oh, life is so glamorous in Canada or in the United States or at that other company. What you don't know is it's actually problems. And so in the middle of everything, you see problems. And now the reason why I'm bringing the idea or the topic of problems to you, and why I just shared with you those three things, is because you can use that to your advantage in your career or whatever it is. You can use that. As a matter of fact, there's people who are already using it in their professional lives. For example, journalists, right? We could have two journalists, for example, right? One is reporting about, let's say, for example, how people went to a certain place and they planted trees and, they're helping the environment, blah, 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 right? And then you have the other journalist, and he's going to report about, let's say, for example, a big scandal that's going to happen. What's going to get more eye views? It's the one about the big scandal, right? Because there's connotation of problem in that. The other one is just good, oh glam. Remember the second thing I said? People are going to be drawn more towards problems, are going to notice problems much more, right? We had like I said, another good example was the lady who went through that cancer thing. She's now on a platform sharing that story. And with that also her business as well. Doing that, something that was horrible, and she's using that too, because again, we are just wired to notice problems, and we connect on such a deeper level. You probably connected with her, I'll speak for myself. I connected with her more than I did any other speakers here. And it's because of that, the challenge. The same thing in storytelling, right? If you had a movie where the main character always, everything was good for them, there was no conflict, everything was just smooth, you wouldn't watch that movie. The highest grossing movie in India, I was reading today, and it's a movie called Dangal. Yeah? And I read the synopsis of the movie, and it's all about problems, how that family faced problems. And that's why people relate, people drawn to that. So you can use actually problems in your career to further your career, to further your story. Whatever it is, you can use problems. And the other reason why I introduced the idea of topics, the topic of problems is fulfillment, for example. So there's a Japanese concept, it's called ikigai, right? And the idea where I'm coming from is normally people think to find fulfillment or to find satisfaction in life, you have to get. But for many people, they have found satisfaction in actually giving in a meaningful way. In a meaningful way. That's how you find satisfaction. And so if you're leading with problems, for example, what you end up having is you are going to be helping people. So your actions are actually going to be meaningful. And so when you, for example, let's say you're a doctor, for example, so now you're serving people, you are providing a solution to a problem, and you find satisfaction in that. Teachers, for example, there's a problem, ignorance. There's a need for young students to learn. It's a big problem. And when they're serving us, they find satisfaction. I met so many teachers, they love teaching. You could give them so much money to go into the industry, they wouldn't take that money. They love teaching because they find satisfaction in what they do. And why? It's because they're helping so many people. People who are rich nowadays, think of people who are like the Elon Musks, the Jeff Bezos, the Bill Gates. The reason why they're there where they are today, even Mukesh Ambani, they are solving problems, right? So they found satisfaction in what they were doing because they are actually helping people on a big scale, on a big scale. And that's the value in problems, is that one, you're going to be noticed very easily. Yeah? So if you go on social media, even if you go on social media, the things that you are likely to click on are things that have a negative connotation to it. The 5 mistakes you're doing in your business. You're like, oh, I'm making mistakes, right? Then you're going to click it because it has a negative connotation to it. I just talked to you about the journalism thing. We tend to listen to stories that have less scandals. We know them. Someone made a big mistake, So you get noticed. If you've done any social media work, you know that the strategy for social media is you first of all identify the people you want to talk to, number one. Number two is you identify their pain problems. What are the challenges? What keeps them up at night? Because if you figure this thing out, you can now talk to them. So even on social media, you can grow by what? By tapping into the problems. Look for the problems and then find a way to solve those problems that people are willing to pay you for. And that's what I'm here to share with you today, is that even though problems are bad, they get a bad rep. Because let's be honest, it sucks when you're going through something that you feel like you're not supposed to go through. It's a horrible experience to be going through a problem. But you can use problems because people are going to notice. And so if you want to get known on social media, you lead with problems. What are the problems of the people? You speak about it and speak about the solutions. You are being solution-oriented when you're speaking about your problem, about whatever it is that you're speaking about. People will notice. People will tune in. And at the end, you're going to find satisfaction and fulfillment in whatever it is that you're doing, because you're not just doing things to get paid. You're doing things to actually help people in a meaningful way. My name is Desire, and that's all I have for you today. Thank you very much.